LinkedIn presents.
This is the Forbes Books Podcast, conversations with remarkable folks who are impacting the world of business and beyond. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and this week we're talking about transforming education and creating economic opportunity for all with Dr. Lisa Andrew, the president and CEO of the Silicon Valley Education Foundation, a nonprofit org that delivers and advocates for STEM education that inspires underserved students to succeed in college and careers. Lisa is a speaker and a visionary leader who sees possibilities and is not afraid to dream big and lead change. She's also the host of the new podcast, They Are Waiting for Us, a show that explores how education can unlock the potential of every child and create a more just and affluent society. Lisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation, Joe.
Me too. And Lisa, I want to go way back, and I want to ask you when you fell in love with education. And what I mean by that is, like, when did you know this could be a career? Because I wonder, me growing up, just give you some context, me growing up, I knew I wanted to be in show business. I didn't have many skills, but I knew I wanted to be in show business. I didn't know how I was going to go about doing it, but I had that goal since I was born. I was always putting on shows for my family, doing magic shows, impressions. I was probably pretty terrible at it, but I knew from a very early age that I wanted to make this my life. When did you know that education would basically be the through line of your life?
So when I was young, all the way back to age 4, I was going to be a nurse. I drew myself being a nurse. I colored pictures and coloring books of being a nurse. I sent my grandmother letters about me being a nurse. I had 3 or 4 doctor kits. I was going to be a nurse. Alongside of that, every time I went to my grandmother's house, she had a desk, like it was lawn furniture. It was decorative furniture on her porch. My cousin and my brother and I would play school. My brother never wanted to be the teacher. My cousin never wanted to be the teacher. So I was the teacher. So I'm telling everyone I'm going to be a nurse. I actually graduate high school and I get my nursing assisting certificate. And I'm all set to begin a career in medicine. And I'm now collecting kids from the neighborhood coming to my house. Hey, my mom says you can help me with my science project. Hey, can you show me what's going on here with this experiment I'm supposed to be doing? My mom wonders if you can help me with my math. They would just kind of always collect and gather.
And let me ask you this quickly, Lisa. Did you have the self-awareness at that time to know, hey, I'm smart, I know stuff? Or did you take a lot of that for granted until you started getting the random requests from the neighbors asking for free tutoring?
Yeah, I think it wasn't that I was smart. I think that I had the patience to sit and work with their children. I think it was that I had the patience to break it down for them, to listen to what they said, see what they knew already, and then say, okay, we need to start from here to go forward. And then was able to get them to actually do their own homework and their own science fair experiment, and so that they would learn something. I don't necessarily think I believed I was smart until I got my doctorate. But
just a couple of years later, right?
Yeah, a couple of years later. But you know that I was aware that I could be around children and be very patient and listen to them and teach them something. I was very, very aware of that. And then it was my husband who said to me, have you ever thought about going into education? And that would allow you, the old adage that teachers have summers off. Then you could be at home with our own kids. Your schedule would match our kids' schedule. And I actually thought, wow, that's something to consider. And I went to see how much of the coursework I had already taken to become a nurse would transfer over into a teaching credential. And at the time, as now, math and science teachers were in high demand, and found out they would take everything that I had. It would transfer over. I wouldn't lose anything. I could either become a K-9 teacher, meaning not canine dog, but kindergarten through 9th grade teacher,
I was going
Right?
there too. Thank you for
Yeah.
saying that. I was like, wait, what?
Or I could be a park ranger.
What?
So that's what
Wait. Those are the
that-
two options?
that's what my classes added up to. If I wasn't going to go into medicine, I could either go the park ranger route or I could do the kindergarten through ninth grade teacher certification route. I did not like the green pants of park rangers. So I thought that probably being a teacher was great. And that's how it started.
Wow. Amazing. And then obviously you didn't stop there. You mentioned the doctorate and obviously the work you did we're doing with the Silicon Valley Foundation. So how does one go from being a teacher, and without saying like a basic teacher, but a teacher, to then becoming what you became? Like, why did it just not stop there? Because some people happily, I mean, I remember teachers who were teaching well into their 60s and 70s, teaching the same class for 40 years. But maybe I'm just kind of doing psychoanalyzing you. Maybe that wasn't enough. Like you wanted more.
So I never thought I would leave the classroom. I loved being a teacher. I was a first grade teacher, a fourth grade teacher, and a sixth grade teacher. So I had the whole gamut. And then the principal started sending me teachers to teach. So just like my neighbors would send me their children, I was asked to be a mentor teacher or a partner teacher. I was asked to have student teachers. So then I became a teacher of teachers. And then the superintendent of the district came to me and said, we're going to make you an assistant principal. So this is your assignment next year. This is where you're going. And I said, I don't want to be an administrator. That doesn't look nearly as fun. And he said, well, that's going to be your placement. And that's kind of how the journey began. I took my first administrative class and then I stopped. I quit after a semester. And I went to the superintendent and I said, I'm not cut out for that. That's not me. To me, it seemed like there were all these other students and then there was me, my opinion, my viewpoint, my ideas of how we should go about doing things were so different. And I felt like that was a for sure sign for me that I didn't belong. And I went to the superintendent. I said, I'm sorry. I just don't, it's not for me. He called the professor and then called me in. And so I was called to the superintendent's office with the professor and myself. And they sat down and said, no, that's exactly why you should do it. You should do it because we need more people like that. We need more folks like you. So let's talk about how you're going to navigate this program and feel like it's a place where you belong. And that's how it started. And once I got my administrative credential, then they ask you to be a principal. And then I went back to being a teacher of teachers, where I became a coach and then assistant superintendent. But along the line, I kind of jungle gymmed out into serving in the nonprofit space or being the service provider instead of the service consumer. And I did that as I worked on my master's, and I did it as I worked on my doctorate. So I had this experience of working in the system. I had the experience of working alongside the system. I had the lived experience of what it means to sit on each rung of the ladder. And then I had I knew what it felt like to be able to be a part of the education and not have all the bureaucracy. So when I was a superintendent and this position was offered to me, I could have this kind of influence, do this kind of great work, and not have to have the bureaucracy. I'm like, yeah, I think that sounds okay.
Wow. That's great. You know, one of the things I've always been very transparent about is I don't feel like I have a lot of tangible skills. My skill set is very intangible. Like my resume is pretty bare. It's like I did this, this, and this, but it doesn't really explain who I am. But you have both of those things. You have the tangibles, you have the work experience, all these fancy degrees. But then there's like this intangible side where you have this sort of magnetic force that pulls people towards you. Where does that come from? Is that just part of the Lisa Andrew DNA? Have you always been that kind of centrifugal force of just attracting all these people to you?
Yeah. So I can tell you that when I was growing up, my nickname was Sunshine. So in the neighborhood, my neighbor called me Sunshine. My grandmother's bridge group called me Sunshine. So that was like, so I'm just trying to go back to like, perhaps it started then to where those folks in my life saw that and called me that. And then maybe it was a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy if that's what you're told and if that's what it's, and so now you radiate. I have an incredible curiosity about people, and I think people sense that, and that draws them in. I'm genuinely interested in you. I think people are fascinating and different, and I want to know like what makes you tick that doesn't make me tick, and together can we come together and have synergy? Early in my career, whenever I would watch other professionals, other teachers, other presenters, principals when I watch a TED Talk, I always watch those folks and I'm like, what is it about them that really is intriguing to me and really draws me into them? And is that something that I want to adopt so that I can connect with more people, or so that I can be impactful, so that I can serve and support other folks? And so I think that it's those things that have kind of built it up, maybe some raw DNA that was already there, and then definitely encouraged by the adults in my life, and then just my natural curiosity and bent for that. I also have a huge sense of I need to mentor, I need to coach, I need to open the door and keep the door open for others who don't get the door opened. So I think people are also attracted to that. Like, how can I work with her to get access to things? That's part of what I think my role is. I think people come toward me for that as well.
And you obviously love education. You love people. You love helping them. And I like to keep things very sunny as well on this podcast. But let's go into the dark side here. Education is under war from all different facets. In a nutshell, and I know this is kind of a complicated answer to a very simple question, but what's wrong with education right now?
So 2 things. Believe it or not, I get asked this question all the time. So 2 things. One is here in the state of California, we do not have equal funding. So a student who is born in one particular zip code is maybe worth $10,000 per year. 20 minutes down the road, different zip code, that district gets $15,000 per year for that student. So that's replicated over and over and over throughout that student's life. That investment that California makes in each individual student is, one, not equal. And then if you put on top of it what certain students need because they're learning English, because they come from poverty, because they're foster youth, and then that needs to be extra funds that are given to them. So then now you have true equity. So the state of California needs to go to equal first, and then we can get to true equity with these other support and supplemental. And the second reason why is no one in California, and I say never say no one, don't be that declarative. Most systems and people in California are not focused on student achievement. I have not recently in my lifetime heard of a superintendent being fired because of low test scores. So when you have funding that's not there, as well as a lack of focus on achievement, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to just keep continuing the cycle. You're going to get the same product. These one-time funds to get students caught up because of COVID. One-time funds, they need funds for a prolonged period of time, and we need to be held accountable for improving their test scores. There needs to be, this is the cause, this is the effect, and this needs to be the result. This is how we're going to intervene. And that's just not how the system works. We're okay with mediocre. We're okay with producing the same product. How do I know that? Because we've done it for the last how many years?
Yeah. It's so funny. You should be a teacher. I don't know if anyone ever told you that. But you make the answers so simple. But if you were to ask a naysayer, they would say, and you've heard this, I'm sure, the problem's just too big to solve. We can't fix it. We can't fix all of the education problems in this country. And I know every year they put out the rankings, and I currently live in South Carolina, and I think South Carolina ranks as like the lower third in worst education, whatever kind of metric they come upon. What separates those schools that are in the quote unquote top 10 states in the country to the ones that are in the bottom? Is it just because of those 2 issues you brought up, or is there a grander issue that separates the best of the best in this country to the people that are struggling at the bottom of the list?
So I do think that, yes, in the states that are performing better, the funding is far more than in California. And the way the funding is allocated and used is much different. But it's not nirvana. I would say the way they look at student achievement is different. And know that each state gets to choose how it measures achievement. State A may say, well, we have 90% of our kids who are proficient. And state B can say, well, we only have 60% of our kids who are proficient. They're not using the same test.
Oh,
So the rigor of the test in state B may be much higher than the
interesting.
rigor in state A that's saying they have that many proficient. So that's why you have to take and really dig down and look at what those pieces are.
So those rankings are hogwash, essentially, because you're comparing apples and oranges. One
Yeah.
state could be saying, hey, we're awesome at 60%, but the other state is saying we're awesome at 80%. So that's where you get that sort of like grand
Right.
scale of like worst to best or what have you. Man, I know this is kind of silly, but is there any way we could unify and like make all the states the same in terms of like how they judge achievement, or is that impossible because we're now in this bifurcated, every state's on their own, you guys do what you want to do, here's a few bucks from the federal government every few years, go with it. There's no way to unify all this?
Well, there's always a way to do it, but there's not a will to do it. I mean, you have everyone always wanting local control, whatever local control is, whether it's our own country, our own state, our own county, our own city, our own school district. Everybody wants local control because their community is so unique. Now, I would agree with that. There are definitely communities that are different than one another. However, I think what we call proficient for community A should be proficient for community B, especially if we want both communities to be able to be the local workforce. And this is what we're facing in Silicon Valley. So when you have those funding disparities, I'm only having part of the community that's going to be able to become the Silicon Valley workforce because that's what they have access and opportunity to. They're able to have these robust programs and have exposure because they have the money in order to provide those things. Awesome. I think that should be every school district in Silicon Valley. We don't need to bring down this other one. We need to bring up everybody so that all the students have the same access and opportunity so that they can become the local workforce. So I think there is contextual pieces. However, when you have something that's so different within a same county, that's not okay because of the local workforce. Do I know that holds true in Iowa? What is it that Iowa needs in order for it to be a vibrant community and a vibrant state and then able to contribute to, the United States? Definitely probably different than Oakland. However, we shouldn't, based on your zip code or based on where you're born, that it be something that's lesser than. There are assessments that go across countries. So there are assessments that test Finland, China, the United States, and we take them and then we can see where we rank, right? But then you have to look at who are the children taking those assessments and homogeneous versus heterogeneous, what language they're given. And I mean, there's all kinds of nuances and there's not a nirvana assessment, but I hear what you're saying. I think we can get closer to it being at least a red apple and a green apple instead of an apple and an orange.
And I think it's probably because of the world we live in now, how we're hyper aware. And since you've been in education basically your entire life, it's so weird now that we're arguing about what should be taught in schools. And please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember ever having this discussion ever, like publicly. Like you might have, if in your local board of education or something, there could be debates or something like that. But now what's being taught in schools and what's in books in schools and what's in libraries, I wonder if all of that noise is detracting from the root problem and the root fixes of what we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes. Is that just noise, like those arguments of what we should be teaching as opposed to what we really should be talking about? And I don't want to get you in trouble for anything, but if you want to talk about this, I'd love you to speak up on this. But I just wonder if all of that is just more of a distraction than will really helping in the grassroots level.
So as the saying was when I grew up, if you didn't want to mow the lawn, any excuse is a good one, right?
Yeah.
So whatever excuse I can come up with so I don't have to mow the lawn is a good excuse. Whatever excuse I can come up with so I don't have to look at student achievement. Whatever excuse I can come up with so I don't have to look at really having a robust workforce, or really the promise of economic mobility, or really the promise of being able to be a productive citizen. And then I'm going to have all of these distractors. I agree with you 100% on that. I think I can remember when I was teaching, I would have irate parents, or when I was a principal or superintendent. I pay your salary. I pay your salary. My tax dollars pay your salary, so I get to tell you what to do. And every state has its constitution, it has its standards, it has its frameworks, it has its pieces. And those are the things that have to go on in school. And some folks want to interpret that as, yeah, but I just want this piece because this other piece is not what I believe, or this other piece is going to lead my child to do this, or I don't like what this said. I wish somebody would have said that about algebra. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I struggled in algebra.
Yeah.
Nobody was advocating for me, like, this is detrimental to my child. Quit teaching algebra, right? But it's kind of like that. Or let's kind of stay that the parents who say, well, I wasn't good in math either. So they have this expectation that it's okay that their child's not good in math. It is in that kind of that same vein. And as states, we have to say, well, this is what's important. And then now we go back to local control again. Well, in the state of Texas, we believe this is important. And in the state of California, we believe this is important. That is where then I wonder, well, what are we saying as a nation is important? And if you're going to go into American history, that's not just about your state. You get to have the grade level that learns just about your state, right?
Yeah.
But when you're doing American history, it's about all the states and it's about everything that happens. And I also think there's a huge debate right now about developmentally, when can a child learn about this? Because this is just so horrific in our news, like race.
Mm-hmm.
How can a third grader or a fourth grader even tackle that? When we as 30, 40, 50, 60-year-olds can't even tackle that. That's a real thought. But I do wonder if it became part of what we talk about as our history and we come to know it and learn it, that when we are 20, 30, 40, and 50, we are able to talk about it. So when are you? Because I know some 80-year-olds that can't get there yet. I don't mean they don't want to. I'm just saying it's still really difficult. So the debate will continue to rage on as long as it's allowed. And, today we had affirmative action knocked down in the Supreme Court, where the majority leader doesn't feel that the color of your skin determines anything about you as an individual. That was in the majority statement. Students should be based on their individuality. I'm sorry, the color of your skin does have to do with you as an individual. That's a proven fact, and you just watch how people interact with folks. So it's that kind of thinking that until we move beyond that, people are going to become very polarized. And right now, it's very popular to be polarized.
You're almost rewarded to be polarized because you want to be, whether left or right, you all want to preach to the same choir. You want the same people. You don't want to have any arguments. You just want to just spout things out that will feed the base, all that red meat politics and all that stuff. But all right, so that's the dark stuff of education. Let's get back to Lisa Sunshine here.
Okay.
Who's doing good? Who are you proud of in this world of education? Whether it's a state, county, even a human being, who do you think is doing right by the next generation of children, or even the generation now? Like it's crazy. I think now the young kids are called Generation Alpha, and then you have Gen Z. So what's being done well?
Mm-hmm. That is a great question. Thank you for asking something to look on that side. I don't have a container answer like this group or that group. I can tell you attributes that I see in different groups that I think are really making a difference. Our young people who actually go out and talk to groups to find out what their perspectives are, where are they coming from, tell me more. Can we come together on this cause and are doing it? I see that in a lot of our high schoolers when they're working on community-based projects. You look at the group and it's very diverse. You find out about the group's family backgrounds, and they're very diverse. You work with them in a group and you see how they're talking and speaking with those in the community, and it's very community focused and community based. I just think that there's many 13 to 25-year-olds who are connecting with community in a very different way. And maybe they're not seen as threatening. So then community then responds back to them differently. So I think that any project that I can do with any group like that, I'm about it. I think we have the most amazing kindergartners that ever walked on the face of the earth. I think that when they come to us and they're just ready to go, as you know, they're waiting for us.
Mm-hmm.
And they show up, they're bright-eyed, they raise their hand, they're inquisitive, they want to know why, they want to know why not. They want to know yes, no, they're just ready to go. To me, that's the most promising group that we have. And the more that we can show up for them in a way that keeps that going, the better their educational experience is going to be. I know we want to do some crowd control at times, but sitting down crisscross applesauce snowball hands can kind of quell that energy that comes shining through. I think there's some really good nonprofit groups that are out there providing opportunities for students who don't have anyone in their family that's ever connected to certain job sectors or that have ever connected to educational institutions. And there's a lot of nonprofits reaching out to make those connections in conjunction in support of school districts. I think those are great things that are happening there. I am really hoping that everyone else in the education system soon looks up from the problem that's right in front of them, whatever that is, and begins to say, we just got to move out of this. But it's very, very difficult. There's a lot of yelling and screaming and demand in the face of teachers and administrators right now of things other than educate my child.
Yeah. It's one thing, and you bring up the point about kindergartners. I feel like we don't give kids enough credit. I think it's a systemic thing. I think generations, we never gave kids enough credit. You know, the number one YouTube personality is called Mr. Beast. I'm not sure if you ever watch it, but he has, God, I'd be lying if I knew how many stats, but like hundreds of millions of views on his videos. His videos are of him giving away free money and gifting people. Cool. That's what the youth of the planet is watching. Yeah. They're watching a guy give money to people, and whether the guy's doing it for philanthropic reasons or for views, who cares? At the end of the day, these kids are watching someone do a good thing. And I feel like we talk about the iPad generation. These kids are, they're obsessed with their iPad. They don't get their head out of the phones. But when we don't give enough credit for like what they're watching. Like we all think, they're just watching unboxing videos. But some of these kids are watching genuinely really good things that, whether it's educational or not, at the root of it is just being a good person. And I think I always try to oversimplify things. As you can tell, Lisa, I'm a very simple man. But if we can just keep it to, hey, let's be nice to people. Let's be philanthropic. Let's be kind. If you start there from that place, there's no way to go but up. But if you start on the other side of they're wrong, what's going on? Let's put our kids in boxes.
Agreed. So first off, when I hear they're in their iPads, they're in their phones, they're on their games, we need to look in the mirror. We created that. So, and I agree, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Just because we can have them learn this on the computer, just because we can have them listen to this doesn't mean we should. And because the human brain and the learning centers and how we learn and all the emotional intelligence, that's not going to come through iPad. And we know that those things are the pieces that we are most in need of right now. How to get along. Do you have your own self-awareness? How do I have a different opinion of you and we still get something done? That's called kindergarten. I'm back to kindergarten. That's called, I don't like that. She does. We're going to share. I don't like doing this right now. That's right. But in 5 minutes, we're going to do what you like. I mean, it's not, we have made it okay to be at odds. And that's on us. That's on the adults. If that's what's happening with the kid, we have to look in the mirror, right? We have to look in the mirror that we've created that. I have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter who loves the iPad. She comes to grandma's house, she sees the red iPad sitting back there, and she points at it. And of course, I know what she's watching because I've put it on there. And I see the things that she repeatedly wants to watch. She loves to watch the book, I Am Dirty. And it's about a dump truck who goes to the, right? We got to take her to the junkyard. I got to take her to see a dump truck, right? So it's leveraging, now we have to go on a little field trip. Now we have to see what it is. Touch the big tires. Smell it. That didn't cost me anything. So I think it's learning how to leverage things. Teachers can show parents how to leverage those things as well and turn the things that I agree that they're interested in and they're wanting to watch on the iPad also into an outside experience. One of the things that we're seeing in some schools is because we went so digital and so online during COVID, how do we now come back to that? Because you could just plant yourself back in a classroom and then put them on a computer again. So how do we come back to there's time for the computer and then there's time for, individual work, but there's also time for the social interaction, the group projects, and all those things that you have to be in the room to do. Like when you go to Google and you go into a room, you in a conference room and the whiteboard and there's posted some whiteboard stuff all over the place. They're sitting in the room together doing that because the interaction goes much more quickly, the energy, the body language, this, that, and the other thing. So we only have to look to ourselves. We have to hold ourselves accountable for what's happening with the youth. And when we have the will as the adults to behave differently, to act towards each other differently, to expect higher results from our students, to, support those who are giving us those higher results, when we have the will to do that, things will change. At skill, I believe we have all the skill to do it. It's all about the will.
Well, Lisa, we've talked about your career, your impressive resume, what you're doing. What does the future of Lisa Andrew look like? What do you want to do over the next 5-10 years in terms of now that you've established yourself at Silicon Valley Foundation, and I'm sure you want to go beyond that, but what do you want to do next? What's on that bucket list that you have not crossed off educationally? Because it sounds like you're like the Ryan Seacrest of education. You've had literally every job in the world of education. What do you want to do next?
I really, really, really want to work alongside communities who are underfunded to get the funding for education. I really, really want to work with our legislators to do that. I really want to support that, have that happen. So that's within the next, you said 3 to 5 years. I really want that to happen. The other thing that I really want to see happen is our teachers be able to go back to teaching. How can I support the county, the city, and being responsible for mental health, glasses, food, diapers, dog food, and not the school? Because teachers go to school to learn how to teach subjects. Managing someone's mental health, managing someone's case file, managing do they have all the dentist appointments that they need. Managing all that is not what teaching is supposed to be. So I really, in the next 3 to 5 years, would like to see that untangled, because I know that it got really mixed in during COVID, and it's time for teachers to be able to teach, administrators able to build really great facilities and environments and support, and then county and city and governmental services to really step in and take in what they need. And not everything has to be delivered at the schoolhouse door. I know it's great. It's a great gathering place, but that just, it's put too much pressure on the school system to be too many things. So those would be the two things, big ideas professionally. But now I'm going to go back to the beginning. I really want to become a docent at Natural Bridges Beach. So maybe I will go back to being a park ranger. I want to be able to go there and lead field trips on the beach with the monarchs. So how do I go back to those nature days and the science days and kind of come full circle with my degree?
You could probably pull off the green pants now. Now at this point in your life, you could probably, and the hat, you could probably do it, right?
Yeah, I probably don't care is what it is. Now I'm old enough to I don't care what I look like in green pants, and I don't care what I look like in the hat. But you're right. I go out there and I'm like, I think I want to do that. At least I can be a docent where I can maybe wear my own clothes. But I think probably going full circle and doing that, getting back out in the nature and things with the kids and the adults would be great.
Awesome. I want to wrap things up by sharing my kindergarten story because you mentioned kindergarten a couple of times. So when I was in kindergarten, it was a traumatic experience for me because it was the first time I left my mother. And so when my mother, I remember this 40-something years later. So when my mother took me to kindergarten the first time, I was heartbroken. I was like, wait, I don't get to be with you all day anymore? And it would just destroy me. And so I was so...
And your mom was like, right,
get that kid out of here.
Yeah.
So I had this ploy. I guess I was a really brilliant kindergartner. I decided to start wetting myself so that my mother would have to come to the class and take me home. Well, my mother was smarter than I thought. And after a couple of times, she was like, screw that. And she sent me to school with an extra pair of pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was my kindergarten experience. And I feel like that's a super microcosm of what we've been talking about, how if we have one thing stopping us, whether it's a kid peeing their pants, we've got to be able to have that second set of pants ready to go to help that kid out.
I would agree. And look at what you learned. What you learned was you're going to be okay by yourself. You have grit. You got what it takes. Tough it out. Good for your mom. She had the will to do it. And good for the school. The school had the will to do it. And I bet you don't wet your pants now when you want to get out of something.
No, although I still bring that second pair of pants just in case.
For sure. We all do. Of course we do. Yeah.
Lisa Andrew, find out more information at drlisaandrew.com. Lisa, thanks again for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome. And that'll do it for another episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe. That way you'll get new episodes as soon as they're available. And if you have a spare moment, I would greatly appreciate it if you leave a review, which would help other exceptional entrepreneurs like you discover the show. You can always connect with me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Joe Pardavila. And please do not forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.